The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. New York streets, usually glowing with lights and crowded with voices, now looked washed out like the city itself was exhausted. Steam hissed from subway grates, yellow cabs splashed water onto sidewalks, and the distant hum of traffic felt like a never-ending sigh. Under the canopy of a closed bakery, a young homeless woman curled herself tighter inside a threadbare blanket. Her name was Clara Bennett. Clara's once bright hazel eyes were dulled by sleepless nights and hunger. She had been living on the streets for 2 years, ever since life unraveled, her mother's sudden death, her abusive stepfather, the job she lost when she refused her boss's advances. New York had no mercy for the weak, and Clara learned to hide her fragility under silence. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "Just one more night. Tomorrow will be better." But tomorrow never came. People passed her by like she was invisible. Some dropped coins in her paper cup without looking, some wrinkled their noses, and others looked away quickly, afraid of catching her despair. Clara was used to it. The world had forgotten her. Until the night she met him. At the opposite end of the city, in a towering glass building that pierced the skyline, sat Alexander Drake, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in Manhattan. 35 years old. Impeccably dressed. CEO of Drake Enterprises. His reputation was a storm of contradictions, ruthless in business but privately no one really knew. Tabloids painted him as a playboy, competitors called him a cold-blooded genius. Yet when Alexander stood in his office staring out at the glittering city, the truth was simpler. He was a man with everything except an heir. Family legacy was carved deep into his bloodline. His father had built the empire but died young, leaving Alexander with not only wealth but also a crushing responsibility. Investors whispered. Journalists speculated. And relatives circled like vultures, waiting for him to fail. He needed a child. Not just any child, an heir. Someone to carry the Drake name. But love? Marriage? Trust? Alexander had seen enough betrayal in boardrooms and bedrooms to know those things were fragile illusions. He didn't want romance. He wanted control. And so he formed a plan. Cold. Calculated. The kind of plan only a man like him could execute. It was raining that night when Alexander's car stopped at a red light near the Lower East Side. He sat in the back of his black Bentley, scrolling through emails, his jaw tense. Then he noticed her. A woman, sitting on the wet pavement outside a bakery, blanket clutched around her, hair sticking to her face. She wasn't begging aggressively like others, she wasn't even looking up. Just sitting there, quiet, defeated. Something about her stillness caught his attention. Something raw. Unpolished. Real. "Sir," his driver asked, glancing through the mirror. "Stop here," Alexander ordered. The driver hesitated. This wasn't a neighborhood for men like Alexander Drake. But the car pulled over. Alexander stepped out, rain soaking the shoulders of his tailored coat. He walked toward her, polished shoes splashing in puddles. Clara looked up, startled. His presence was overwhelming, dark eyes, sharp jawline, an aura of power that didn't belong to this broken street. She pulled her blanket tighter. I don't have anything. Please just." "I'm not here to take," Alexander interrupted, his voice low and steady. "I'm here to offer." Her brows knitted in confusion. "Offer what?" He studied her face as if measuring something invisible. Then he said words that made her breath catch. "How would you like to change your life forever?" They sat inside the Bentley, warmth from the leather seats thawing Clara's frozen fingers. She stared at him, disbelief written all over her face. "You're offering me money? To what, be your maid?" she asked bitterly. Alexander didn't flinch. "No. I want you to have my child." The words hung heavy, thicker than the rain outside. Clara's heart pounded. "What?" "I don't want a wife. I don't want complications. I need an heir. You will carry my child safely, and when the child is born, you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life. A house. A bank account. Freedom from the streets. Clara stared at him as if he'd gone insane. "You asking me to sell my womb?" "You can call it whatever you like," Alexander replied coldly. "But think carefully. I'm offering you a way out. You won't have to beg. You won't have to freeze on sidewalks. 1 year of your life for a lifetime of security." Her mind spun. This was madness. Dangerous. Immoral. But then she thought of the nights she went hungry. The time she almost didn't wake up because the cold cut too deep. And for the first time in years she felt something impossible hope. "What's the catch?" she whispered. Alexander's eyes softened just slightly. "There is none. Only one condition. Once the child is born, it belongs to me. You walk away and you never look back." Clara's throat tightened. She should have said no. She should have run. But instead, her trembling lips formed one word. "Yes." The next morning, Clara found herself in a penthouse she never dreamed existed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and servants moved like shadows obeying every order. Alexander handed her a document, pages upon pages of legal jargon. At the bottom, a contract worth $5 million. $5 million. Clara stuttered. "Half now," Alexander explained, "half after the child is born. You'll be under medical supervision. Private doctors. Nutritionists. Everything to ensure the baby's safety." Her fingers trembled as she touched the papers. She thought of alleyways, of sleeping under cardboard, of begging strangers. And now $5 million? She signed. For the first time in years, Clara smiled, weak, hesitant, but real. She didn't know that the moment her pen touched the page, she had stepped into a world she couldn't escape. Days turned into weeks. Clara was given new clothes, warm meals, and a room of her own. Doctors confirmed she was healthy enough for pregnancy, and soon the process began. But with every passing day, questions haunted her. Why her? Out of all women, why had Alexander chosen a stranger from the streets? One night she dared to ask him, "Why me?" Alexander paused, glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes narrowed as if the answer carried too many secrets. "Because you have nothing to lose," he said finally. "And sometimes people with nothing make the best choices." His voice carried something unspoken, a shadow of pain. Clara didn't press further, but unease crept into her bones. Months passed. Clara was pregnant. Doctors visited daily, and Alexander ensured she lacked nothing: food, comfort, safety. But the more the child grew inside her, the more Clara felt something dangerous: attachment. She would sit alone at night, hand resting on her swelling belly, whispering softly to the little life inside her. "I don't know if you'll ever know me, but I love you already." It terrified her. Because when the contract ended, when the child was born, she was supposed to walk away. But how could a mother walk away from her own blood? And what Clara didn't know was this: Alexander was watching her too closely, too carefully. And the man who claimed he didn't believe in love was beginning to feel cracks in his own armor. Sunlight spilled through the vast windows of Alexander's penthouse. The city outside roared with its usual chaos, but inside there was an unusual calm. Clara sat at the breakfast table, her hands cupping warm tea. Her belly had begun to swell slightly, the first visible sign of the life inside her. For the first time in years she wasn't cold. She wasn't starving. She wasn't invisible. Yet her heart carried a heaviness money couldn't wash away. Every sip of tea reminded her, this child isn't mine to keep. Alexander entered the room, dressed sharply as always. His presence filled the space, confident, commanding, yet strangely quiet today. He paused when he saw Clara staring absent-mindedly at her stomach. "You should eat more," he said, his voice calm but edged with control. "I'm not hungry," Clara replied softly. Alexander's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than usual. He wasn't a man who wasted time with emotions. But the sight of Clara, fragile yet determined, stirred something he couldn't name. Later that evening, Clara wandered into the library. The room smelled of old leather and cedar, lined with shelves of books that probably hadn't been touched in years. She trailed her fingers along the spines until she stopped at a photo frame on the desk. It was a younger Alexander with an older man's stern, powerful eyes so much like his. "That's my father," Alexander's voice came from behind. She turned, startled. He stood in the doorway, shadows stretching across his face. "He built everything you see," he continued, stepping closer. "And he died making sure I never forgot what it cost." There was pain in his tone, buried deep under steel. For the first time, Clara saw more than just the cold businessman. She saw the boy who had lost his father too soon. "Is that why you want a child?" she asked carefully. Alexander's eyes darkened. "I want a legacy. Something that can't be bought, stolen, or destroyed." Clara swallowed. She wanted to tell him that children weren't contracts. They were love. But she bit her tongue. It wasn't her place. Not yet. Nights were hardest. Clara often woke up, hand on her stomach, fear gripping her chest. What if the baby didn't survive? What if Alexander changed his mind and threw her back onto the streets? One stormy night, unable to sleep, she found herself pacing near the balcony. She whispered into the darkness, "I don't care if I walk away with nothing. I can't let them take you from me." Unbeknownst to her, Alexander was standing in the shadows of the hallway watching. He heard her trembling voice, the desperate love in it. And for the first time in years, Alexander Drake felt powerless. Weeks passed. The private doctor, Dr. Ellison, came for a routine checkup. Clara lay on the examination bed, Alexander standing silently in the corner, arms crossed. The doctor placed the scanner on her stomach, and then there it was. A faint but steady heartbeat filled the room. Clara's eyes welled up. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. Alexander's jaw clenched, his grip on the chair tightening. The sound was overwhelming. Raw. Eternal. Healthy, Dr. Ellison confirmed. Both mother and child are strong. Clara smiled through her tears, but when she turned her head slightly, she caught something she never expected. Alexander wiping the corner of his eye quickly, as if denying it ever happened. That night, Clara confronted him. "You felt it too, didn't you? That heartbeat. It's not just business anymore." Alexander's face hardened. "Don't mistake sentiment for weakness." "But it's not weakness," Clara pressed. "It's human." His silence was louder than any words. Clara stepped closer, searching his eyes. "You think you can sign contracts and own people, but this child will change everything." Alexander turned away, retreating into the shadows of his room. But her words cut deeper than he admitted. Because somewhere inside he knew she was right. Far from the safety of the penthouse, in the glittering world of Alexander's rivals, rumors began to spread. The tabloids had started whispering, "Alexander Drake is hiding something." At a sleek bar downtown, two men in tailored suits exchanged knowing glances. "If he really is expecting an heir, that changes the game," one said. "We need to find out who the mother is," the other replied, sipping his drink. "And use her." The game had already begun. And Clara had no idea she was the pawn in a war much bigger than herself. Morning light painted soft gold across the penthouse windows. Clara, wrapped in a silk robe Alexander's housekeeper had given her, sat quietly with a diary in her lap. She had started writing letters to her unborn child, words she knew she might never be able to say aloud. She scribbled, "I don't know if I'll ever get to hold you as my own. But remember, you were loved before you ever opened your eyes." As her pen slowed, she noticed something strange on the balcony table. A small envelope. No name. No seal. Just placed there. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a single photograph, her sitting on the sidewalk weeks ago, the night Alexander first found her. Her heart froze. Someone was watching her. She rushed to Alexander's office, where he was pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, sharp, filled with authority. When he saw her pale face and the envelope in her shaking hand, His eyes darkened instantly. He snatched the photograph, jaw tightening. "Where did you get this?" "It was just on the balcony," Clara whispered. Alexander slammed his phone down. His mask of calm cracked for the first time, revealing something fierce, fear but disguised as rage. "Listen to me," he said, gripping her shoulders. "From this moment, you don't step outside this penthouse without me or security. Do you understand?" Clara's lips quivered. "What's happening?" "There are people who would do anything to see me ruined," Alexander said, voice low but intense. "And they'll use you. Or the child." This was a warning. Her breath hitched. The contract never mentioned danger. She thought the fight was only inside her heart, not outside walls. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She wandered into the living room, where she found Alexander pouring himself a glass of bourbon. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie loosened, a rare glimpse of him stripped of his armor. "Why didn't you tell me this was dangerous?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Alexander looked at her, eyes tired. "Because you would have run." "Maybe I should have," Clara shot back. "Maybe this was a mistake." For a moment, silence cut between them. Then Alexander set down his glass. He stepped closer, his voice low, almost vulnerable. "I chose you because you had nothing. But now you're carrying everything that matters." Clara's breath caught. His words weren't romantic. They weren't tender. But in their rawness, she felt the truth. She was no longer just a vessel in his plan. She was something more. Far across town, in a dimly lit office filled with cigarette smoke, two men studied Clara's photograph. "She's not from high society," one sneered. "No family, no background. Easy to break." "Then let's break her," the other said coldly. "If we can't take down Drake, we'll take down his heir before it's even born." They raised their glasses in a silent toast. The hunt had begun. Clara woke one morning to find her security doubled. Two guards shadowed her every step, and Alexander barely left her side. But safety felt like a prison. At night, she pressed her ear against her stomach, whispering, "Don't worry, little one. I'll protect you. No matter what." But deep inside, fear grew roots. What if she couldn't protect the baby? What if Alexander's enemies got to them first? One evening, Clara found Alexander sitting on the floor of the nursery he had begun preparing. The room was half-finished, soft cream walls, a crib still in boxes. He held a tiny baby shoe in his hand, staring at it like it was something fragile, something foreign. Clara leaned against the doorway, watching him. "You don't look like a man who only wants an heir," she said softly. Alexander glanced at her, his guard lowering just enough for her to see the boy he once was. "My father used to sit with me like this," he admitted quietly. "Told me I would carry everything he couldn't. I hated him for it until he was gone." For a moment, Clara saw not the millionaire, not the contract, but a man haunted by ghosts. And she wondered, maybe everything was about to change. The nursery smelled faintly of fresh paint. Sunlight poured through the windows, casting warm gold across half-built furniture and unopened boxes. Clara stood by the crib, her hand resting on her round belly, while Alexander leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching her quietly. For a fleeting moment, it felt almost normal. Almost like a family. But peace never lasted long in Alexander Drake's world. A knock shattered the stillness. One of his men stepped in, face pale. "Sir, we need to talk. Now." Alexander's jaw tightened. He gave Clara a look that told her to stay put, then followed his guard out. In the study, two security men laid a file on the desk. Photographs spilled out, Clara at the doctor's office, Clara walking in the garden, Clara even inside the penthouse balcony. "These were taken in the last 72 hours, one guard explained grimly. Alexander's face darkened. "How the hell did they get this close?" The guard hesitated. "Sir, there's more. Someone tried to bribe Dr. Ellison. They wanted Clara's medical reports. They are after the baby." For a heartbeat, silence suffocated the room. Then Alexander's fist crashed against the desk, rattling the glass. Double security. I want every camera checked, every man vetted. If there's a mole, find them. His voice was ice. Deadly. But inside, fear coiled. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for them, Clara and the unborn child. That night, Clara confronted him in the dining room. "You're hiding something again," she said, her eyes sharp. "Don't lie to me, Alexander." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Clara, I don't want to burden you. You think I'm fragile? You think I can't handle the truth? I'm carrying this child, Alexander. I deserve to know what's happening." For the first time, his voice cracked. "They're coming for you. For the baby." Clara's heart froze. "Who?" "My enemies," Alexander admitted. His eyes locked on hers, raw and unguarded. "Men who would rather see me burn than watch me build a future. And now they know you're my future." Tears welled in Clara's eyes, but not from fear. From the word he had slipped, my future. Within days, Alexander made arrangements. The penthouse, though heavily guarded, was no longer safe. "We're moving," he told Clara one morning as suitcases lined the hall. "Where?" "To a private estate. Remote. Secure. No one will find us there." Clara hesitated, touching her stomach. "And if they do?" "They won't," Alexander said firmly. "Not while I'm breathing." There was steel in his voice. But beneath it, Clara heard something more dangerous than steel: desperation. They left at dawn, escorted by black SUVs. Rain slicked the streets, traffic thin. Clara sat in the back seat with Alexander beside her, his hand unconsciously resting near hers. For a moment, she thought maybe they'd escape. Maybe things would calm down. Then it happened. A black van screeched out of an alley, slamming into the convoy. Gunshots exploded, glass shattered. Security men shouted, returning fire. Clara screamed as Alexander pulled her down, shielding her with his body. The car swerved violently, tires screeching against wet pavement. "Drive! Drive!" Alexander roared. Bullets tore through metal. One grazed the side mirror, another punched a hole through the trunk. But somehow the SUV pushed through, engines roaring, until the van was lost in traffic. Breathless, Clara clutched her stomach, shaking. Alexander grabbed her face, forcing her eyes to meet his. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming. His voice dropped, fierce and trembling. "I swear to you, Clara. I'll kill every last one of them before I let them touch you or our child." The safe estate was an old mansion upstate, surrounded by acres of forest and guarded by Alexander's most loyal men. Clara struggled to adjust. The silence was eerie, the isolation suffocating. But worst of all was the growing question in her heart. Late one night, unable to sleep, she walked into Alexander's office. Files and papers were scattered across the desk, names, numbers, photographs. But one document stopped her cold. It wasn't about rivals. It wasn't about security. It was about her. A full background check. Every detail of her past, her mother, her stepfather, even the abusive boss she had fled. Clara's chest tightened. He had known everything about her before that night. Couldn't sleep. Alexander's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, eyes unreadable. You knew all of this," Clara whispered, holding up the file. "You didn't just find me that night. You were watching me." Alexander's jaw clenched. For once, the master of control faltered. "Yes." "Why?" Her voice broke. "Why me?" His silence was heavy. Finally, he stepped closer, his voice low and rough. "Because you remind me of my mother. She was strong. She had nothing, but she fought for me. When I saw you on that street, I saw her. I saw hope." Clara's tears blurred the pages in her hands. She didn't know whether to feel betrayed or chosen. Days turned into weeks at the estate. Clara's pregnancy advanced, her body weakening under the weight of stress. But her resolve hardened. She wasn't just carrying a contract anymore. She was carrying love. One stormy evening, lightning flashing across the windows, she confronted Alexander again. "This can't just be about legacy anymore," she said, voice shaking. "Not after everything. Not after what we've survived." Alexander stared at her, rain hammering against the glass. His walls, his armor, his coldness, they cracked. "You're right," he whispered. "It's not just about legacy anymore." He stepped closer, his hand trembling as it brushed against her cheek. For the first time, Alexander Drake, the man who trusted no one, who bore everything he couldn't feel, let his heart slip through. "I don't just want the child, Clara. I want you." Before she could answer, the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the mansion. Shouts erupted outside. The guards' radios crackled. And then, through the storm, a single shot rang out. Clara gasped, clutching her stomach. Alexander pulled her into his arms, dragging her toward the hidden panic room. "Stay with me," he growled, fury and fear burning in his eyes. "No matter what happens, I won't let them take you." The door slammed shut, locking them in darkness. And outside, war had begun.